We begin today the Gemara on Daf Samach Vav Amud Beis, the last line. We begin the 10th Perek of Masechta Nedarim. This Perek and the following Perek are going to both talk about a new theme regarding Nedarim, and those are the halachas of the father or a husband being able to be mefer, to be able to annul the neder that either his daughter or the wife made. There's many details in these halachas. Generally speaking, the halacha is, and this is clearly in the Psukim and Parshas Matos, the father is able to nullify the nedarim that his daughter makes when she's in the age of a naira or when she's in the age of a katana, not which is up until 12 and a half. 12 and a half, she's a begettes. At that point, she's independent. You can't tamper with her nedarim. And a husband is the one that's able to be mefer, he's able to nullify his wife's nedarim. That's the general rule. But this begettes is from the age of 12 and a half and older, correct? This Mishnah, though, is going to speak about the in-between stage, which is a Naira HaMayrasa. A Naira Mayrasa is a girl that's in the age of Naira, that's 12. Or when the Mishnah says Naira, it means 12 or younger, and she's Mayrasa, first stage of marriage. Right? There's Kedushin, or Eirison, which is when you give the ring, Areyat Mukadeshesli, that's the first stage of marriage. And then the second stage of marriage is Nisuin. When he moves in, then they live together, that's the full marriage. In this in-between stage of Ma'irasa, who's the one that could nullify the neder? The father or the husband? That's the halacha what this Mishnah begins with. Zakt Eilige Mishnah. Naira ha-Ma'irasa, the Naira that's Ma'irasa, the first stage of marriage. So then Avia ubayla mefira nederah. In order to nullify the neder, it has to be both the father and the husband together, they will nullify her neder. The Mishnah then says, Hefer ha'av, lo hefer ha'bal. If the father nullified the neder and the husband did not, or hefer ha'bal v'lo hefer ha'av, or the father or the husband, that is, nullified the neder or revoked the neder. That's how they translate over here the word hefer. Revoked the neder v'lo hefer ha'av, and the father did not revoke the neder. Ein mufer. So the neder is not nullified. You have to have both together. Ve'ein tzarich loymar, needless to say, shekayim echad mehen. If one of them, whether the father or the husband, clearly went and was makayim the neder, he confirmed the neder, he validated the neder, he says, I accept my wife's neder. So then for sure, or the father said, I accept my daughter's neder. So then for sure, this neder will not be nullified. It has to be dafke both together. Okay, this Mishnah seems to be a little bit redundant. It says the halacha right in the beginning, and then it says again. So the Gemara will discuss this right here. Zok the Gemara, Hainu Reisha, the second din that the Mishnah says, that if the father nullified without the husband nullified without the father, isn't this the same thing that it says in the Reisha, when it says that both together have to nullify the neder, Avia, Ubaylam, Afir Nedereal, that they both together should nullify the neder? Answers the Gemara, Mao de Teime, no, the Mishnah has to clarify this, because I would have thought, Oy avia, oy baila katani. When it says avia ubaila, many times in the lashon of a Mishnah, when it says the vav doesn't mean and, the vav can mean also or. So if it would just say avia ubaila, you would think maybe it's saying that either the father or the husband could nullify the neder. So therefore, kamash v'la, the Mishnah has to clarify and say that if the father without the husband without the father, it does not revoke the neder. That's why the Mishnah is clarifying this. The Ran adds to the Gemara, so the obvious question, why doesn't the Mishnah just clearly say the expression shneyen, instead of saying avia ubayla, which could mean both together, or could also mean either or, let the Mishnah just clearly say shneyen, that they both together have to do it. So the Ran says, based on the continuation of the Gemara, we'll see that even if it would say shneyen, it still wouldn't be so pashut. Because when you say that the father and the husband together nullify the neder, the question is, who's the ikr? When you combine two to nullify the neder, who's really the primary one that we use to nullify the neder? You could say maybe that it's the father, you could say maybe that it's the husband, and even if it would say shneyem, maybe you would think to say that if the primary one that has to be mevatel the neder did it, he could still do it alone. Shneyem means if the secondary one was mevatel the neder, he is going to have the support of the primary one to be mevatel. So shneyem wouldn't necessarily mean that you always need both. Only if the one that's not as strong, that's less powerful to be mevatel the neder, then you need the support of the second one. So even that lashon would also not clarify the din. The Mishnah has to spell out one without the other. Either way is not going to work. Now the Gemara goes to the next part of the Mishnah. It says, "Ve'ein tzarich leiman," needless to say, shekayim echad mehen. If one of them confirmed the neder clearly, then the hafara of one is not going to be good. So this Gemara asks as well, Lama lila misne, why does the Mishnah have to say this? It's obvious, and it's actually a kal v'chomer. Hashter yesh loymar, now you can say, as the Mishnah said, hey for zeh beloy. If one revoked the neder without the other, so v'loy klum, so that's nothing. You have to have both together. If so, kayim echad men lamali. Why does the Mishnah have to teach me in a case where one of them went ahead and confirmed the neder that the hafara of one of them doesn't work? Or you read this together. If you go to these next two words, you read this together. Lamali tzrich lemisni. Why does the Mishnah have to say this yet again? The Bach takes out these two words. Tzrich lemisni. It looks like extra words here. So the Gemara answers, no. This case is actually teaching me a new chiddush. Ki yitzterich. When do I need ki yitzrichle? When do I need this new halacha here? Vein tzarich leimer shekayim echad mehem kagoin. In a case of what happened over here is as follows. Heifer echad mehem. One of them, whether the father or the husband, did go and revoke the neder. V'kayim echad. And now the other one went and was mekayim the neder. He said, no, I accept the neder. I confirm this neder. Then what happened is v'chazar mekayim. The one that was mekayim the neder changed his mind. V'nishal ala kamasai. He requested a heter for this that he confirmed the neder. Just like we learned before in the whole Masechta, when you get any neder, that you're able to request a heter from a chacham for a neder, it's the same thing regarding this. When you're making, when you're mekayim, that is. When a husband or a father is mekayim the neder of his daughter or wife, you're able to request a heter for that akam. For this you confirmed the neder. So he was mekayim the neder. So once he was mekayim, so he can't nullify the neder anymore. But now he got a heter for his akama. So now he wants to combine to the other that was made for the neder. He also is going to nullify the neder. So ma'al the tamer. So I would think to say, my doi ki this that he confirmed the neder. Okay, he uprooted that. And when you uproot this, you uproot it retroactively. That's the kayach of uprooting any neder. And over here as well, when he uprooted this hakama, this that he confirmed the neder. So therefore you would think, so now he could combine to the hafara of the other. So for example, the father was made for the neder. Then the husband was mekayim the neder. And the husband then uprooted his akama. And now the husband wants to combine to the father's hafara. This should be the hafara of both together to be made for this woman's neder. Kamash Malon, that's what the Mishnah is saying. The mefirin shneyem bevasachas. This that we combine the father and the husband's hafara to be made for the neder, it has to be bevasachas. What does bevasachas mean? Usually bevasachas means literally together at the same time, but that's not what it means up here. It doesn't have to be mamish at the same time, but what it means is there can't be anything that's going to be a interruption between the hafara of one, the hafara of the father, let's say, and the hafara of the husband, that in between there's a hakama that makes it impossible for the husband to be made for. If there's something that is blocking in between the hafara of the father and the hafara of the husband, so then these two hafaras can't combine. One without the other is zero. In other words, the way to understand this is, when you learn the Mishnah B'Pashtus, it says that the father and the husband are made for the neder. What would you think? What does that mean? The father is 50% and the husband is 50%. So you have both together. You have 100% the nullification of the neder. What the Gemara is basically saying is, it's not 50% and 50%. The father's hafara itself is zero. The husband's hafara itself is zero. When you have both of them together, that is what creates the whole hafara. So when you have something in between that's separating one hafara from the other, they don't combine. So it remains 0 and 0. Right? Uninterrupted. Yeah, exactly. So therefore it has to be uninterrupted. And that's what the Mishnah means when it says that he was mekayim, and then he changed his mind, and now he wants his hafara to combine. It can't combine anymore. But the Rana clarifies and says, so if so, the Mishnah wouldn't have to say the words ve'ein tzarich loymar. According to this, the Gemara here is explaining. The Mishnah is saying a huge chiddush. How this hafara works, it must be together. Why does the Mishnah use the term ve'ein tzarich loymar? So the Ran says, in the simple pshat of the words ve'ein tzarich loymar shekayim echad mehem, that the Mishnah is using these words ve'ein tzarich loymar, and simply that means that if one confirmed, so then the hafara of the other itself is worthless, and you understand that that can't be the chiddush, because that's taka ve'ein tzarich loymar, and this itself will lead you to the pshat of the Gemara. So the Mishnah taka uses this lashon, and it leads you to this pshat of the Gemara that says that even if they're both being mefer, but as long as you had an interruption in between the hakama of one of them, it won't work. There's another point just to mention bekitzer. The Rana has a big arichas over here regarding this inyan, because when it says here in the Gemara that one of them went and was mekayim the neder, and then he uprooted that kiyum, he was shoyel, he was mata that akama. Usually when you uproot a neder that you make, and in this case he uprooted the hakama, that uproots it retroactively. And therefore, you should be able to combine the hafara of the father and the hafara of the husband, even if you confirmed the neder in between and there was that interruption in between, but you uprooted it. And when a chacham uproots a neder, it uproots it retroactively. The Ram brings with the Gemara that says, if you're mekadesh isha, and you make a condition that the condition is only if you have no nedarim. It turns out she does have nedarim. And then she's mater the neder. The hatar of the neder goes l'mafreya, and the marriage is a good marriage. So over here, why don't I say that this hakama is also uprooted l'mafreya? So the Ran answers over here, it does not work. Because the point is, like I said before, the hafara of the father alone is 0. And the hafara of the husband alone is also 0. If at the time when the father's hafara was there alone, there was an interruption that made it impossible for the husband to be mefer, that interruption makes the father's hafara 0. And you cannot combine it to the hafara of the husband. When it comes to the example of kedushin that the Ran says over there, the kedushin is a real ma'isa kedushin. It's dependent on a neder. It's not going to take effect until that neder is going to be removed. So you remove it. Once you remove it, then the kedushin takes effect. But over here, the Gemara is saying that the hafara of the father and the hafara of the husband are 0. That you can't have any interruption in between. Even if you can have hafaras nedarim later, it's not going to help. That's the teichen of what the Gemara is saying there. Okay, now the Gemara is going to bring the source of this entire halacha in the psukim. It said in the Mishnah, "V'naira meirasa." Going back to the first halacha, the Mishnah says that you have the naira meirasa via ubayla, the husband, the father, and the husband, both will revoke the neder. Minallah. What's the source of this? Where do we see that it's both the father and the husband together? So Omar Rabbe says, or others are going to say Rave. It's from the pasuk Omakra. The pasuk says, "V'mhoya yisiel leish." What's if she goes and gets married? Unudera Allah, she has a neder. This pasuk and over there, in the continuation of that pasuk, it says that the husband is the one that's made for the neder. That's the simple pshat of the pasuk. From here, mikan, we learn out from this. This is the source. L'naira moirasa. This pasuk m'hoyisil isha is talking about a woman that got married in the first stage of marriage. So shalvio bailam afir nederel, that the father and the husband together will nullify the neder. How do you see it in this pasuk? In the simple pshat of the pasuk, it actually only mentions about the husband nullifying the neder. So the Ran says you see it because it says ve'im. So the Gemara understands right now that you have to darshan the vav of ve'im adding to what it said before. What's the first thing it speaks about in Parshas Matos when it talks about nedarim? First thing it speaks about is a father having the ability to nullify his daughter's neder. His daughter when she's a naira. That's the first halacha. Then the pasuk continues. V'im ha'yisiyah le'ish. Now the husband could nullify. So the way we understand this is because it says avav, which is adding to what it said before. It's not mistaver to say that when she's married, only in the stage of edison. Don't forget, what does edison mean? She's still living in her father's house. She's not even living with her husband at all. She's still living by her father. So Gemara understands it doesn't make sense to say logically that the father loses his complete rights over his daughter's behavior and he can't be made with the neder. So therefore we understand that in addition to the father being able to nullify the neder, now the husband will also have to be made for the neder. That's the source. But the Gemara will go through a long discussion here to explain, to narrow this down, that this is taka the pshat in the pasuk here. Frek the Gemara, the first question here is, but maybe I could say, when it says if she got married, maybe it means full marriage. And saying that when there's a full marriage, then maybe the pasuk is saying that only the husband could be made for the neder. In other words, according to this question of the Gemara, we're not going to darshan the ve'im, that it's a vav that's connected to before. It's not, when the Torah writes a vav, not always do you darshan it that way. And over here, we're going to say that the pasuk is talking about a new marriage, a full marriage, and the husband is the one that's made for alone. It's not talking about Edison, that middle stage when she's still living in the father's house. Says the Gemara, no, it can't be talking about that, because later in the parsha, it talks about the Nisua separately. Imishum Nisua, if this pasuk would be speaking about when she's fully married and she's living in her husband's house, for that there's another pasuk later. The parsha says, Vimbeis Isha Nedara, if in the house of her husband she made the neder, and there the husband is the one that nullifies the neder alone. So that halacha, when she's fully married, says separately. So this pasuk has to be speaking about the naira hamayrasa, like we darshan before, that it's the husband together with the father that nullify the neder.
But it also says ve.
Where does it say ve?
By the Isha.
V'im beis isha nedara, or by
Yeah.
the vav again? The vav that you not always the yidashin of vav in the Torah. The Torah always writes viv. Not always the yidashin vav as being meisif to what it said before.
That's my question.
Yeah, so over here you don't darshan. When it says v'im ha'yisiya, you don't darshan. It's not connected to before. And when it says v'im beis isha nedara, you do not. It's not connected to before.
Okay, first we do connect.
No, we do not.
No, in the first one it says
V'im.
Amarabba, Amakra.
Oh, no, in the answer of the Gemara. Now, in the answer of the Gemara, when it says v'im ha'yisiya, yes, we do connect it to before. Correct, because it's an extra pasuk. The only reason we connect it to before, usually when it says avam, we don't automatically connect it to before. But if it's an extra pasuk, so then it's teaching me something different. So we have to say that we connect it to before. This, that a husband could be made for the neder of his wife. That says in the pasuk v'im beis isha nedara. Why does it say again before v'im ha'yisiya leish? Extra pasuk. That we say, there it's coming to talk about half marriage when she's still living in her father's house. And therefore we do darshan that vav to say that the husband and the father together will be made for the neder. But the Gemara asks on this answer itself and says, wait a minute, this pasuk v'im beis isha nedara is not necessarily an extra pasuk. Why can't I say both of these psukim are speaking about when she's fully married, living with her husband? You'll ask me, why do I need two psukim to say that the husband nullifies the neder of his wife when she's fully married to him? That is, why do I say both of them? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you. It's coming to say that the husband cannot nullify any of the nedarim that his wife made before marriage. In this pasuk it says, V'im beis isha nedara, which means when she was already living with her husband, then she made the neder. So it's coming to clarify another detail regarding how far the rights of the husband goes to nullify the wife's neder. So the first pasuk V'im ha'yisiya leish is saying the halacha that the husband can nullify his wife's neder when he's fully married. The second pasuk is adding, and that only applies to those nedarim that she made after she got married to him. So there's no extra pasuk here. So the Gemara gives two answers to this question. One answer, the Gemara says, V'lav memela shamit mina. But don't I automatically understand from the second pasuk? Can't I say that the second pasuk teaches me everything? Teaches me both? Teaches me the fact that a husband could nullify his wife's nedarim when he's fully married to her. And it also teaches me the detail that he could only nullify those nedarim that she made in his house, because that's the meaning of the words, beis isha nedara. She made the nedarim when she's in the father's house. So the previous pasuk where it says, V'im ha'yisiya leish, is still an extra pasuk. That's one answer. And therefore we say that pasuk goes on when she's in edison, half marriage, and then the vav, together with the father, can be made for the neder. Another answer the Gemara says, V'bayisem, the Havoye Kiddushin Mashma. In the first pasuk, when it says V'im ha'yisiya leish, how do we know that it means only edison? Because that's the meaning of ha'yisiya. Havoye, the word Havoye in the lashon of Torah means the first stage of marriage, when she becomes connected, and when she becomes an eshes ish to her husband, even when she's still living in the father's house. That's what the word Havoye in the Torah means. And therefore, we know that the father and the husband could be made for the neder together. Okay, but the Gemara is still not done. The Gemara now presses further and asks, so we know that it's an extra pasuk, but maybe I should say that when the Torah writes V'im ha'yisiya leish, what is it telling me? Av l'chudei mefer. Maybe the father, what the pasuk is saying is that the father himself could nullify the neder even after the kiddushin, even after the first stage of marriage. Now, this question of the Gemara doesn't spell out. It's very hard to understand what the question of the Gemara is. If you look into the pasuk V'im ha'yisiya leish, the pasuk there continues and clearly says that after V'im ha'yisiya leish, what happens? The husband is the one that now could be made for neder. That's what the Torah clearly says. So how can the Gemara ask that maybe we should say that the father alone could be made for the neder? So the Ran explains 2 points. First of all, he says the reason the Gemara is asking this question is misvara. The Gemara is now asking, logically, it makes sense to say that after the first stage of marriage, who should be the one that has control over this girl's nedarim? The father, not the husband. She's living in the father's house. So her behavior is, who's the one that's still educating her, disciplining her? The father. So logically, it makes sense that the father should be the ones having the right to be made for the neder, not the husband that lives somewhere else. That's why the Gemara is asking this question. That's number one. Number two, the Ran explains, in the pasuk it clearly says that after the first stage of marriage, even the first stage of marriage, the husband could be made for the neder. Maybe when it says in the pasuk the husband could be made for the neder, it's not saying that the husband could be made for the neder alone. The husband's afara alone is worthless. It has to be with the afara of the father. And the father's afara is the main thing. And the father really could be made for the neder himself. What's the koyach of the husband? The husband could block the afara of the father. That's all the Torah means to say. How could he block the afara of the father? What if the husband decides to confirm it? The husband shows up and says, I agree to my wife's nedarim. That will block the father of being mevatel the neder. That's all the Torah means to say. But really, who's the only one that can be made for the neder alone? Just the father. Maybe because it says v'im, it's a continuation from before, that the father is the one that has control over his daughter, and maybe that applies here as well. That is the pshat in the Gemara's question. So the Gemara answers, no, that can't be. Because imkain, if you're going to say that even after a person's daughter was married, the first stage of marriage, the father could still be made for the neder totally alone. So if so, going back to the first part, where the Torah speaks about a father being made for his daughter's nedarim, va'asra isa b'veisa via yani isa, or behenia via isa, I think it says there in the pasuk. The fact that it says, b'chlal, that a daughter in the father's house, the father could be made for her nedarim. Lamali. Why does the Torah have to write that? Hashta yesh loima. Now you're coming and saying that we could say that the Torah is telling me, b'makim aros, even after she's already married, the first stage of marriage, and she has a husband in her life. Meifav luchadei. The Torah is saying that even there the father could nullify the neder alone. Shaloi b'makim aros mibaya. Do I need the Torah to tell me that when she's still living in her father's house completely, and there's no edison at all, that the father could be made for the neder? So what the Gemara is saying is, the first halacha that the Torah says in Parshas Matles, that a father could be made for his daughter's nedarim when she lives in his house, is unnecessary. Just tell me that a father could be made for the daughter's nedarim alone, even after edison, and it's self-understood that if she's living in the father's house, even before edison, that he could be made for the neder alone. So it must be that something changes. When she enters into edison, and now there's a husband here, that you have to do it together, the husband and the father. But now the Gemara actually asks a complete reverse question. But if so, you're telling me that it has to be that something changes here, that the Torah is coming to say that after Edison it's not the father alone, it's the father and the husband. But maybe I should actually say, Eime, Av, Luboy, Oros, that maybe the Torah here is coming to say that the father cannot be made for the neder. The Av has to have the Oros to be made for the neder. And not only that, Va'oros l'chudei mefer. And that the oris, the husband, he could be made for the neder alone. Maybe that's what the Torah is coming to say. What are you going to do with the fact that we already proved before that it says the vav, and therefore it's a continuation to before, and therefore even the father also has some power in the neder that his daughter made? What does the Torah mean to say by that? If you're telling me that the Torah is saying that only the husband is the one that can be made for the neder after edison, what it means is the heikim, that if the father decides to confirm the neder, he can block the husband of being made for the neder. Similar to what the Gemara said before, but the exact reverse. Why don't we say that if you look in the simple pshat of what it says in the Torah, even though logically, before the Gemara is asking misvara, it's actually the opposite. Misvara, it makes sense that after the first stage of marriage, when the girl still lives in the father's house, that it's the father that should be the one that should be made for the nedarim. But we refuted that. So now the Gemara is asking, look in the simple pshat of the psukim. In the simple pshat of the psukim, it seems like the Torah is coming to say that after edison, who's the one that's made for? The husband. We prove that the father is involved as well, because it says v'im. The father's involvement is only the fact that he can block the husband of being made for the neder if he decides to confirm it. Maybe that's the pshat. So the Gemara answers a similar answer to what it said before. You can't say that the husband, even after the first stage of marriage, could be made for the neder alone. Why not? Because if that's the case, the Torah then talks about when she's fully married, and it says that then the husband is made for the neder alone. Lamai kosav. Why does the Torah have to say that when she's fully married, the husband could be made for the neder alone? Kal v'chaymer. It's self-understood, and it's a kal v'chaymer. Uma b'mokim av oros meifer l'chudei. If in the case of the edison, when there's still a father here, because she's still living in the father's house. Nevertheless, the husband could be made for the nedarim alone. If she's fully married and there's no father involved here at all, needless to say that the husband could be made for the nedarim alone. Why does the Torah have to mention the father could be that the husband could be made for the nedarim alone after full marriage? Okay, but on this, the Gemara asks, maybe this. So the point the Gemara is answering here is that we have an extra pasuk. So the fact that it's saying that when the husband is fully married, that he can be made for the neder alone, that shows that when it's in the first stage of marriage, it must be different. Over there, it's the husband and the father together. But the Gemara says, no, but maybe that extra pasuk, similar to what the Gemara said before, the Gemara asks, Amen, maybe I should say, in Beis Isha Nedara. This pasuk that seems to be extra, if we're going to say that after the first stage of marriage, only the husband could be made for the neder. So when it says that they're fully married, that the husband could be made for the neder. So that's extra. So Loimar, maybe that comes to say, She'ein Habal Mefer B'Koidman, that extra pasuk is only being written there to say that the husband does not have the right to be made for the nedarim that were made before the marriage. He could only be made for the nedarim after marriage. So maybe both of these psukim are coming to teach me that only the husband could be made for the marriage. But what is it saying? The fact that a husband could be made for nedarim after they're fully married, that only applies to the nedarim that she made now after the full marriage. So the Gemara answers, no, but this itself will prove the point that after the first stage of marriage, the husband could do it together, only together with the father. Why? Because uminei, or others over here, guidance in the Gemara. Okay, let's read the Gemara the way we have it over here. But uminei, from this itself, you're going to understand oros mefer b'kaidmen, that only the husband, when he's nullifying his wife's nedarim after full marriage, so then he could only be made for those nedarim that she made now, after the full marriage. But when the husband could be made for the nedarim after Edison, the first stage of marriage, over there, he could be made for nedarim that she made even before the marriage. Why is that? Why is it different? Why should it be, if you're saying that in both cases, the husband could be made for the neder alone, whether after full marriage or after half marriage, why over here, why after full marriage could he only be made for those nedarim that she made after the marriage, and after the first stage of marriage she could be made for the nedarim that she made before? The only way to explain it is el alav mishum shutfa seda'av. The only way to explain it is because when the husband that is being made for the nedarim after full marriage, he's doing it alone. If he's doing it alone, his power over his wife is only as far as the marriage goes. Only the nedarim that she made after the marriage. When he's made for the nedarim after the first stage of marriage, he's not doing it alone. He's doing it together with the father. If he's doing it together with the father has the power and the rights over his daughter from the beginning, from birth. And therefore, he can be made for those nedarim even from before the marriage. So this itself proves to you that in the stage of Edison, it's the father together with the husband. So therefore, there's no question on the point of it that we're proving it from this pasuk. So B'kitzur, it comes out that you look in the Parsha, in Parshas Matos, you have the three stages in the Parsha there. The first chelik of the Parsha talks about the father being made for the nedarim when she's still living in his house. The second chelik of the Parsha is talking about when she's already married, the first stage of marriage, Edison and together, the father and the husband. And then when it says Beis Isha Nedara, it's talking about full marriage, and that's only the husband alone that could be made for the nedarim.